Hi friends, this is Walter from Zimstones by Walter, and today I am going to be creating a mixed media piece using the Mixed Media Kit for June from Trey Jolie Kits. The kit itself is really cool, and what came with it for the month of June is a paintbrush, some crafting sand slash powder to like thicken things and give texture, the stencil from Finnabair and Prima Marketing called Manuscript, which is really cool. I love this stencil. An 6x8 canvas. And then it also came with some modeling paste from Finnabair and Prima, as well as 3 acrylic paints. We have a violet, we have carmine, a nice red shade, and we have yellow ochre. I also ordered the June card making kit, and I'm going to be using 2 elements from that as well that really inspired this product. The first is this beautiful Victorian Dreams paper collection that is by Studio Light, and we're going to be using a few pieces out of there. And then also these really pretty little purple flowers from 49th and Market. They're thistle. We're going to use some of those as well. Additionally, I have a silicone mold that I used to create this acrylic frame. I'll do other videos on how to create these, but basically you just pour the acrylic mixture into the mold and you let it cure under a UV light. And when you pop it out of the mold, this is what you have, a really nice detailed, you'll see once we get it painted, frame, very ornate, and I think it's going to work nicely within this piece. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is to get a base coat onto my canvas, and for that I'm going to use the ochre, and so shake it up to get it nicely distributed, and then we'll pop that open. We're going to put some into a paper cup like that. I'm then going to add in some white because I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm going to add in some of my own white acrylic paint to lighten that up, because that is a pretty dark color on its own. It's a nice rich yellow though. Get some of that white in there. It's coming. It's a little slow. The bottle's getting to be a little empty, so it's going to be time to get some new, but that should do it. Let me get that covered up. Grab a rag so I can keep wiping my hands as I go and not get paint on anything. My plan is to incorporate this paintbrush that came in the kit, not to use it for painting, but to actually incorporate it to be a part of the piece. And you'll see what I have planned for that. So I'm just going to grab a smaller paintbrush and get this mixed up. And this isn't going to require a lot of paint. It's just going to be getting a coat. And it can be a very thin coat. Like I don't want it to be saturated. But get that mixed up nicely. I love these little paper cups because they do a great job with allowing you to easily mix and not have to rinse something. So after I have that mixed, I'm going to start with one side. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Whatever you want. If you want it to be absolutely perfect, you may do that. This is your piece. I just want it to look like it's been kind of put on there a bit. I'm going to do these sides first, just to, since I can use one side for holding it right now. There. Then when I put that down, I can do that other side that I was holding it on last. But now I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to go back and forth to get some of this color on there. And again, I don't want it to be completely covered and perfect. I just want there to be some of that color on there. Because we're going to be incorporating lots of layers in here. And my overall concept for this particular piece, the working title that I have for it is Under Construction. So if that gives you any indication as to why it doesn't have to be 100% perfect, because this is it's a work in progress, work in process. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. Okay, with that dry, I'm now going to do this last side and just whatever paint's left on my brush, or if you can dip it back in, but again, I'm not looking for perfect with it, and we're gonna let that side dry. Okay, with that now dry, I'm going to use something else I have in my stash. This is a spray from Brutus Monroe called Vintage Mist, and what it adds age, and it adds some grunge. So what I want to do is, I have, as you can tell, my really well-used spray box and pieces of cardboard, and all I want to do is just quickly spritz it, just to get some grunge on there. And that will be perfect. You can do it on the sides, but just to get that little bit of grunge on there, get that little bit of aging. And to speed up the drying process, I'm just going to use a hair dryer that I have on hand for crafting. And I'm just going to let that go ahead. And this is why I had said to you it doesn't have to be perfect with the paint, because we're using the hair dryer and that spray to go ahead and get a little bit more color in those areas where the paint didn't get. And this is really perfect. This is exactly what I was looking for. Just a very aged, grungy type of look. And I personally love anything that is vintage looking. It's one of my favorite things to craft, actually. And I do a lot of card making, and I love to do this on cards as well. So with that part done, I'm going to take our dry canvas out, and something else I like to do on the edges, just to give it some character and some age, is I'm going to grab my Vintage Photo Distress ink pad, and what I'm going to do with that is just on the edges, come in, make it a little dark, give it a little color. I even pull it onto the canvas a little bit. It won't harm your ink pad, and it will just add that little bit of extra touch on those sides. And it helps define those sides as well. And it just gives it a little bit of extra character. You can rub it right along. Again, just to get that little bit of grunge on there to make it look that much older. I especially like to pull it in on the corners, just to, there. Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. Next step is going to be stenciling this manuscript background onto there. And again, we're not looking for absolute perfection when doing this. We're just looking to get some nice coverage with it, because we're actually only going to see it on a portion of the canvas when we're done. So I can choose to just like do that particular portion, or I can do the whole thing. We'll see where I end up on that, but we're going to go ahead and continue on using that mixture of the white and the ochre. And to that, we're going to take our modeling paste, and we're going to squeeze a decent amount of that into it, because we're going to want some coverage with this. So we get that in there. I also, for texture, want to add in some of this powder. So I'm going to get that added into there to thicken it and to get it just a little bit of texture and some further dimension. And I'm going to go back into the ochre, and I'm going to add some of that in to darken this up. Now I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to mix this up. You want to be careful because when doing it within this, actually, you know what I'm going to do is grab another one of these to make this a little bit more stable, since that powder had, or the paint had kind of loosened that up a bit. But you're going to get that nicely mixed up. I actually want to see it darker than that, so I'm going to grab the ochre again. I could also come in and add some brown, just straight brown if I wanted to, or, you know, something else to darken it up. But I like the ochre, and since we're already working with it, may as well continue using that. There, that looks good. So, and it doesn't have to be completely mixed. It's okay if there's variations in it, because this is supposed to look vintage. It's supposed to look old, not look perfect. When I'm doing a stencil like this, you get these like fake cards in the mail, credit card offers. It's okay if that falls. And they make a great way to spread your mediums onto your project, because they're wide and they're pretty strong. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here with that on my card, and I'm just going to start getting that applied. And I like to hold it down because with a canvas that stretches a bit, you need a little bit more something to help out with that. Because, you know, the canvas does depress in a bit. So just hold that stencil down, and that does the trick. And getting this applied nice and close. Get another palette knife full. One thing I wouldn't be worried about is if you're using a paper cup like this, and if any of the paper, this hasn't happened with me on this project, but in the past, some of the paper may come up, and I just go with it and leave it in there because it adds more texture to your project. And I just think it's a really cool effect. So we're going to drag this down more. I'm focusing more on this side right now because this is the side where that's really going to have this showing. So this is the side where I really want that writing to be a little bit more prominent. But I am going to end up covering, since I have all of this mixed, I am going to cover the whole thing. And my reason for doing that is, one, I have it, so I may as well use it. But also, two, sometimes as I'm going along like this, my design may change a bit. And I might think, oh, I'm not going to do this, you know, do what I originally had planned. I'm going to do this. And, oh, I wish I had, you know, spent the time doing that other technique or making sure that that space was covered, and wishing I had done it. So if you have the time and you have the materials available, may as well just do it, because it might make life easier for you later on. And again, this is the side, it doesn't have to be perfect at all, but at least it'll have that coverage on there. So here we go. Now we can lift that away, and look at that. That is so cool. I love that. It just looks like some writing. It's just such a great design. I really love this particular stencil. So now I'm just going to let that dry. Before letting that dry too much again, I actually do want to hit it one more time with the Brutus Monroe spray that I had used, the Vintage Mist, just to get a little bit of coloring onto the lettering, a little bit darker. So I'm just going to do that, and you'll see that that pops even more. So with that done, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the hair dryer, and I'll show you the result when it's done. Okay, with that dry, and before moving on to the next step, what I want to do is take my ochre paint and a small paintbrush, and I want to add just some splatters of this onto there, just for some effect. So I'm just going to dip that in, and I'm going to focus on the on this area in particular because that's the area that will be seen in the piece. But just some random taps and splatters just to get some of that on there. There. That's what I was going for. If you didn't have this ochre, or if you wanted to use different colors, you could certainly use black paint or ink. You could also use white if you wanted it to be a little bit of a lighter effect. You could also use gold. Gold would look good with this too. I'm just gonna apply some heat to get that dry so that we can move on to the next step. I absolutely love this. I love that the that ochre acrylic paint has a little bit of shine to it, which just gives that little bit of extra effect. But that, I mean, I love it, the way this looks just in and of itself. But now we're going to move on to what else we're doing on the canvas. And so I had mentioned to you this really pretty pad of paper from Studio Light that came with the card kit this month. I mean, the images are just gorgeous. Really, really pretty. And there's a few in particular that we're going to use. I mean, something like that could be really pretty to cover that up, but that's not what I'm going for. I had mentioned to you that the name that I'm using for this piece is under construction. And so part of the story that is factoring in here is covering up the past, covering up a broken heart. And so moving on. And so I'm going to use part of this piece of paper. And while we're in here, I'm going to get the other pieces that we're going to use. We are going to use her portrait from this, so we're going to take that out. And since this is a story of heartbreak, we need that, we need the guy, we need the villain, we need the person that she's moving on from. And there's a great portrait of a gentleman in here. Did I go by it? Let's see. There he is. Really dapper, handsome guy. We're going to be using him as well, so we're going to take that page out. And the first piece that we'll be using is this particular piece. And it's called, I'm calling this Under Construction. And so it's about covering up a story, covering up the past. And so what we're going to need is this cut down. Actually, that size fits perfect there. But we need to cut it down to 6 inches so that we have the proper width. So we're going to start with that. So I am going to go ahead and grab my paper trimmer, and we're going to get this trimmed to 6 inches. I want to do it from this side because that's the side I want up in the corner. Going to save the scrap because with pretty paper like that, you definitely are going to use scraps in some other projects, even if it's just like a collage. That would be a great piece for that. So put my trimmer away. Now what we're going to do is we're going to want a deckled edge on this. And so because it's, as I mentioned, it's covering up and it's under construction. So it's going on right now. So since I know that the 8 inches is good, the 6 inches is good, I'm going to want this to be torn at at a diagonal going between the two. And it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but I'm going to try to make it as perfect as I can, because this is the one aspect that I kind of want there to be a really good equilibrium between the two. So using this, I'm sorry, I should have shown you this. This is a ruler I bought on Amazon. That's a decal edge ruler. It has a much smaller decal and it has a larger decal. I want the larger decal for this, so I'm lining up that larger decal up in that upper corner, making sure that that's going to be pointing down on that side towards that corner to get that equilibrium I'm looking for. And now, and if it doesn't work out to be perfect, again, that's absolutely fine. But then you just tear along the ruler and it forms that decal edge for you. I do it really carefully because I want to avoid, like, you know, any kind of rips that might change the overall look. But there we go. Get that. And I'm going to save this as well because this will definitely be used in another project. And down here, all I'm going to do is just finish that tearing down to the corner. Perfect. That looks great. And so what that piece, where that's going to go, is it's going to cover up just like that, so that here is the new covering up the old, covering up the story, showing her moving on. So I'm going to go ahead and get that down onto my canvas. How I'm going to do that, there's a couple of ways I could do it. And originally I thought I was just going to use some double-sided tape and some glue and just stick it right down like a wallpaper. And I still think that's the way I'm going to go. But another cool way that you could do it if you wanted to add some more dimension is by using some double-sided foam strips to kind of elevate it up a little bit. But I think I'm going to go with my original plan. Stick with that and use the double-sided tape and the glue. And I like to use both because the glue is more permanent, but in the long run, but the double-sided tape will certainly help it stick. And the two of them together form a really nice bond. So I'm going to grab my double-sided tape first, and I'm just going to cup up along here and come on that deckled edge and get the tape there. Come along this edge, get it there, and come along this edge, and then just add some more random runs of it. Again, I like to use both because it really does, I find, add some extra strength into your projects. I'm not so sure about the total integrity of using just the double-sided tape, but using the tape and the glue together, I know should make a really good adherence. So now I'm just going to take my glue and make sure that we get some glue down there as well. And you don't need a ton of glue. I think that's something that we focus too much on is, I need a ton of glue on this. And honestly, this is barely arts glue. And I find that this is really strong and it has a good hold. So really, I think that should be fine. So now we're just going to carefully pick it up at an edge. Sometimes when you're taping it using the tape, you get that stuck to your mat, but that easily cleans up with some alcohol. So with that done, I'm going to take this and get that in place. There we go. And if any glue comes through, you can just easily, that just adds to, it kind of helps with actually, I think, at getting a good seal. So I just brush it with my finger, and this glue dries clear, so you don't have to worry about that. That looks really good. That's exactly what I was looking for. So it's almost like putting up a wallpaper over the story, over the history. What I want to do while that glue is setting and drying is to grab my old what is that? The old photo, I think it was called, vintage photo, distress ink pad, and I want to come in here again, kind of getting that wallpaper, because again, this is supposed to be vintage, and I want it to go right there. Then what I'm going to do is take a brush, and I think it'll be fun to add just a little bit along there. And what that does is, if there's any white of the paper from the tearing, it will just color that up. And then you can just go over it a bit too. That looks great. I love it. So that is the background of our canvas now done. And what we can now do is move on to the next parts that we're going to need for the overall design. So first up is going to be getting our acrylic frame painted. So stay tuned. Okay, so I'm just going to use some gold metallic acrylic paint and my paintbrush that was soaking in the water from the earlier painting. I'm going to pour just a little bit onto the silicone mat, because this isn't going to take a ton. But, you know, this frame was really easy to make, and it's really pretty. And it was a lot of fun. So I'll definitely do a video about how to make these, but really they're super simple, and it's just getting some paint on there. It'll probably take 2 coats, I'm thinking. This first one is kind of the base, and after it's dry we may decide that we like it and we're going to leave it like that. But I'm thinking it may take 2, but we'll see. I always say that, you know, it doesn't matter what I think or what somebody else thinks. All that matters is what you think of the work that you're creating. Now, if you're creating it for someone else, obviously you're going to have their thought in mind, but that's our first. We're going to let that dry. I'm actually going to use the dryer to speed up the process, and then we'll come back and take a look at it together. So you can see with that first base that it really did a good job in getting that covered. I want some more coverage on there, so I'm going to continue with more, but that's really going to be your call and what you want to do with your project. I'm also going to want to get some on the sides, so I'm going to continue just going ahead and painting and drying until it's at a point that I'm happy with. How cool does that look? That looks great. I'm really happy with that. Now, since this is supposed to be a little bit older, this is your chance to be able to add like a little bit of distressing or aging to something like this. And so what I'm going to do, you'll see me shaking up, I have this, this one is called Cascade. It's a chalk paint. And I am going to add just a little bit of this because it's kind of on the dark side, but to give it like a patina, just to show its age. And so I'm going to pour out just a little bit of this, and I might thin it out with a little bit of water as I go along just to give it a glaze. So that is more than enough. I didn't shake it up enough, but that's okay, because what I can do is mix it up here on my palette, and if a little bit of that gold gets in, that's absolutely fine. I called it a palette, but it's just my my little piece of silicone that I use for things like this because it then makes it easier to clean up and wash away afterwards. So just a little bit on the, oops, sorry, I bumped the camera. Sorry about that. A little bit on the brush. I'm going to dip it into a little bit of water. And I'm just going to come down just to give it that little bit of aging patina that you might look for and see on something that's kind of older like this. And I like to have the water to help thin it out so it's not so strong, because I don't want it to all of a sudden come in and be just this particular color. The good thing about using something like this is obviously I poured too much of that paint out. I can use a brush to get it back into the bottle so I don't waste it. And you just put this wherever you want it to be. Doesn't have to be uniform. You may not want this at all, and if you don't, that's perfectly fine. I just think it adds a nice little touch and a little bit more character to the piece. And you might want to take your brush and get down into some of those grooves too, so it's not all just superficial, because down there is where some of that appears. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and let that dry. As I do that, since I have this little bit of extra gold paint over here, I'm going to mix in a little bit of this yellow ochre, which is nice and dark, just 2 drops, with that gold. And that's what I'm going to use to paint the top of my paintbrush, just to give it some color. So it's I'm not just using that lightness that's on there. Make it look a little bit older. And I'm just doing it to one side since the other side's going to be stuck down there. And I'm just going to dab onto there as well, just because I don't want that bright silver on my project. But we are going to be adding some other paint onto this as well. And again, we don't want this to be perfect, so you can just go ahead and, you know, we want it to look like it's been used. So we can just take that and do that. Before we put that away, can take some of that as well, get that on there. You can add some water in, but I like the look of that straight, actually. And it can just be nice and messy. Since this is a paintbrush that's being used to metaphorically kind of redo a life, it can be whatever you want it to be. I'm going to let those dry. I'm going to clean this part up because this part is now done, and we'll move on to the next steps. I have fixed my camera. I apologize for hitting that earlier. I'm not one who edits a lot. I actually like to show that as I've said a couple of times throughout here, probably more than you care to hear, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. So I actually don't edit things like that out of my videos just to show you. So I'm going to put just a little bit of the gold on here because I think that's a pretty cool look on the bristles. And so I have that on there. Now I'm going to take my rag, and I don't have to worry about getting too much of that paint off of there because this is all messy anyways, but it's pretty well clean. And I'm just going to take my brush and I'm going to get that gold adhered down onto the bristles first. And that's really just to accentuate the bristles and add a little bit of color to it and some texture. additional texture. I'm going to put just a little bit more because I want this to look used. There we go. And don't forget, this brush has never been used, so those bristles are really going to soak up this paint. Let's get that off of there and make sure that we have it on the sides and on the tips as well. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to take just a couple of drops of the ochre to kind of darken them up a bit. Get those on there, and I'm going to brush that through. Look at that. I think I might put a little bit more on there. I'm loving this ochre paint. This is really great. Okay, there's that. Now, the next one we're going to do is the purple. So I'm going to shake that up really well. I haven't opened it yet. And of course the purple will go right in with the purple in the wallpaper. And for the purple, what we're going to do is we're just going to drizzle it down. And I really want to get some on the tips of that brush. There. That looks good. Now I'm going to take the dryer and I'm just going to go ahead and apply some heat to that to help it. And it's okay if it goes up. That's perfectly fine. This, again, isn't to be perfect. It's just to make it look used. And you can always add some more on as you wish. Matter of fact, before getting too far with that, I definitely want some of this purple up here on the metal. So I'm just gonna do a drop, drop, drop. And just let that do its thing. I'll show you what it looks like once it's done drying. Okay, so I finished letting that dry, and I had wanted to add a little red in, and I wasn't completely happy with that color, so taking a little bit of white, I'm going to add a drop, maybe two, of that purple to it. Now what I'm going to do is, I could clean my brush off, but not necessary. I'm going to mix that up. That's pretty, no, but as you mix it with the white, that's what I was looking for. That's beautiful. Now what I'm going to do is just brush that over the top there. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. And I'm going to save that because I'm going to use some of that later too. So now I'm going to dry this. Okay, so our paintbrush is done. It's, I think, really, really pretty. And again, this is going to continue to tell a story. And so what I'm going to do is I want to figure out how I want to lay it. And I'm going to put it at an angle right about there, I think. Because I don't want it to be completely off of the canvas. But before I put the paintbrush down, we have to talk about our villain here and where we want him placed. I want him in the corner like this, so I'm going to cut him out. Ultimately, that brush is going to be coming down to signify painting him out of her life. So, in order to do this, I am going to move our paintbrush off to the side, move our canvas to the side. And I'm going to take our decal ruler and I'm just going to start tearing a bit. Now, I want this to look kind of like a photograph. And I want to make sure I save the rest of that paper. So let's get him in there. And let's tear that. Now we'll tear it this way to get this guy ready to go on our canvas. Okay, so I have him torn out there. But what I want to do is I'm going to put that paper to the side to be used. I'm going to tear these other edges to make it look completely torn on all four sides, and to take up less room because we just want to make sure that he's in the picture. We don't need all of the extras necessarily. So those flowers are nice, but save them for a collage. You never know when you're going to need something like that, so I am going to put that to the side. And this piece down the bottom won't really matter since it's just part of his suit. I want to get that as close as I can while still being able to tear. And it's just a small amount down here just to give it that torn look. Perfect. Now what I'm going to do is to add some aging. I'm going to grab, I think I'm going to continue with the old photo. That's a really nice brown. So I'm just going to go around the edges here so that those parts that looked a little white now look torn and aged, maybe even a little burned. I suspect that might have been the case in telling her story. Now I'm just going to simply go like this, just to get a little bit of some aging throughout it. Perfect. That is what I was looking for. And so we're going to add that onto our canvas, and we want him to be kind of down here so that when we put the paintbrush on, it's going to be getting towards him. You know what? I just thought of something that might be a little fun. If it's truly a torn picture, let's tear it. Sometimes your design changes as you're going along. It's a torn picture. She was spurned by this guy. She tore him up. Let's treat it as such. There we go. Now when we adhere that, what we're going to do is put one side over there. Let me grab my double-sided tape. Get that on there good. Also going to grab my glue press to get some glue on there to make sure that that sticks. There we go. We'll get this first piece over here in the corner. Perfect. Love that. Now we're going to do the same with the second. Grab my tape, and I think what I'm going to do for even more dramatic effect, this idea just came to mind as this new part had. Originally, I planned on keeping this picture together, but I like the idea of it being torn. And what I'm going to do is let's get, originally, I had said how I was saving the rest of that purple paint over there on my silicone mat. I was just going to like put a line down him, but why not tear the picture like so, get it placed and aligned. Then I'm going to take this paintbrush with that And I'm going to come right down here as a signifying of covering him up. Let's do that. Not a lot, just a little. I love that. This this seems like a Taylor Swift song, doesn't it? So that's done. Then what we can do is, I didn't want his whole face to be covered by the brush, but now we can put the brush on. And for that, I am going to use, you guessed it, I will put some double-sided tape here. And the double-sided tape will work really well with the brushes because it will stick there. And now we're going to take some glue as well. I'm going to put glue up here. I'm going to be pretty liberal with the glue in this case because, you know, I definitely want to make sure that this is going to stick onto our piece. Combination of the two, I think, is a good trick to use to have that happen. And down here as well, let's get that glue into our brushes. I think in this case, more glue is better. You could also use like a Mod Podge. You could use super glue. If you have super glue and you really want to make sure it's going to stick, why not? You can do whatever you want. Okay, so put that down. Now I'm going to stick this down how I want it, and I want it at an angle, just like that. And to make sure it's sticking, I'm just going to come up behind it, behind the canvas, and really press on that to make sure that that sticks down. There we go. And of course, that's going to dry. And that I'm not going to speed up with a heat gun. I'm going to let that dry naturally. And we're getting close to being done. The next part is the framing of our beautiful heroine. So let's get her done. She's going to be a little bit easier, actually, because we just need our scissors. And we're going to cut. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to know that it's going to fit in the frame, and it does. And cut over this way. I can always then cut off any excess that's needed. But as long as her picture is fitting in the frame, that's all I need. And so that is going to be perfect. So what I can do to get her on there is use the glue gun. I'm going to put the glue around the edges of the picture and then just stick it right onto the back. If you wanted a little bit more depth, you could use double-sided foam tape. I think there's enough depth with the frame though, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to get that glue around, and then we can just stick it right on the frame. All I care about is making sure that you can see our heroine. The good news is if there's any on the back, you can just run your finger around it. It will help it stick even more to that acrylic frame. There we go. She's gorgeous. Look at her. She looks like she belongs in that frame. Just absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so now that that part is done, we don't have to wait for that to dry necessarily. But what we can do is get that onto I want it to be on the paintbrush. But I think in this case I am, let's see. No, you know what? I think we'll be okay. What I'm going to do is take our glue and I'm going to put some this is one time when I want to make sure that that frame is perfect, is straight, and is right where I want it. So knowing that it's going to come across here, I can put the glue there, going up and over here. So let's start with doing that. We're going to mark our our spot with the glue. We want lots of glue there to hold that in place. We can come back, measure, coming down over here on the metal. And again, you can use, I am using the Barely Art. It secures things really well. But you can use Mod Podge, you can use whatever type of glue you would like. And just simply push down on that to get it in place. And you can do the same with the picture behind to make sure that that sticks down. Beautiful. If you're worried, like, my fingers are a little dirty, but things are dry, so I'm not worried about them sticking on here. But if you're worried about that, just go give your hands a quick wash, or if you have some baby wipes handy, you can just wipe your hands down with baby wipes. There. We are almost done, and I am really happy with how this came out. I covered up a bit more of the writing than I originally thought I would, but that's okay. That's okay with me. We know it's there. You can still see part of it. I absolutely love that. So, we just need that to dry to make sure that it sticks down. You could use a hot glue gun if you want to as well. Again, I'm not too concerned. I know that this glue sticks, so no problem there. Now, I want to grab a few of these flowers that came in the card making kit. They're purple. They go with the particular color scheme we have here, and I think they'll go in nicely. I like to add things in threes using the rule of three, and that one has a nice leaf on it too, so let's make sure that we get that one. So now for these, you can place them wherever you would like. I personally am thinking that I might do them spaced out because I have something else. There's going to be one more thing that I'm going to have to do to add in here. So yeah, I think I'm going to space those flowers out. However, and you can put them wherever you would like. I think I'm going to do them like right like that, one in a corner down here with the leaves. I really like that idea. So let's get glue on the back of this one. And get that one placed. There we go. We'll do that guy up in that corner. I love these Prima flowers. I actually recently, Prima has a mystery box that you can purchase. And I purchased the mystery box and I got a ton of paper flowers, and I was really happy for that because I love their flowers. I'm going to put that one right there. So there's that. Two more things. One is going to be something I want to add to the top of that paintbrush. And then there is actually a sentiment that I want to add onto our canvas as well. Okay, so I have these pearls. They're nice little jewels. There's my glue. I should have put the glue gun back on the stand, but that's okay. Even though it's sticky on the back, I want to add one there. And I do like to add things in threes. So Since there are varying sizes of these pearls, let's add 3. 3 will fit there. Grab another one, the smaller size, and put a little glue. We can put that one there. And the middle size, or do I want to do this one smaller than even that? Yeah, let's use one of these small guys because I haven't used them too much. Get a little glue on there and put that on. There. 3 pearls on there. Now, there is a sentiment that I want to add. So I'm going to let you know what I did to create that and how we're going to get it on. Okay, for the sentiment, I wanted something to express that she had undergone a change, a transformation. She's under construction. And so I went ahead and thought of including she was herself again. So now I printed that out with a Google Doc, and I'm gonna cut that out. It doesn't matter how straight line or anything it is, because there's a little bit we're gonna do before we use it anyway. So what I'm going to do is grab a brush and the brown one that I love with the vintage photo to kind of get some grunge on that. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead, and I purposely put some spaces in there because I wanted it in 3 sections. She was herself again. Now I'm going to allow some space. Doesn't matter how much, however much you want, because we're going to do a little distressing around these pieces, these words with the pieces of paper anyway. So now I'm going to cut there. Come in. So definitely just leave some space for the distressing, because it will kind of shorten that up a bit. So in order to distress, what I like to do is something that's pretty simple. I keep a plastic knife handy, and I'm going to take that knife and just run it around the edge to create that, not really frayed, but that, that distressed look around the paper. There's a couple of ways you can do that. I first go ahead and run it like this. And this is why I told you to leave space, because it, like, you know, it depending on how much pressure and how much distressing you want, it shrinks. Then after I run it along, I take it and I come at it going across it to kind of bring it in too and make it look a little bit older that way. And I like that. So I'm going to do that to each piece. It doesn't take that long. There are tools you can buy to do this. I'm not going to say not to buy them. I personally, when I get takeout, if there's plastic utensils, I save them for crafting, just because they come in handy. So, and there's 2 more things we're going to do to these pieces of paper after we distress these edges that are going to really help them stand out and look really nice on this piece. So there's that one. And I wanted them cut like this because I didn't want them just to be in a straight line going across. I want to place them throughout in a non-linear way, because I think that just adds to it even more. But you can do whatever you want. If you want them in a linear one sheet, if you want them in a smaller font, you know, a different font, you do you. Everyone's going to like something different. There, so we have that distressing done. Two things. One, I'm going to take my vintage photo ink again, and I'm going to run it along these edges. And you can do it in like different directions to make sure that you get each one with some of that grunge on there. So there's that. And in addition to that, I'm also going to put it down, and I'm just going to stamp it like that just to get some more color around it. Again, you may not want that. I love grunge. I think it adds so much and makes it really look older. But if you don't like grunge, you don't have to have it. And nothing has to be perfect, as I keep saying. And there's going to be one more thing we're going to do before adhering these down. And it's, again, just another little attention to detail. It's the small details that really help your project stand out. There's that. Now, for the last piece, what we're going to do, and I hope I don't bang my camera again. If I do, I apologize, but I'm going in right next to where that setup is. I'm going to take some Golden Glitz pigment ink, and I also want to run just a little bit of that around. And it's just, again, it's subtle, but it's just another little detail that ties in with the other gold that's in here. And you can stamp that quickly as well. Up to you. But I like the look. I like what it does. I think it's fun. So let's get that on that last one. And then our creation is going to be complete. And I have to say, this was a lot of fun, and I'm really, really happy with it. So let's get our words on there. And before you put it down, that ink is still drying. Your hands will get dirty, but that's fine. I like to just, coax those edges up since we distressed them. We'll get the glue on the back, and now you can place them wherever you want. She was... herself. And while that glue is still allowing you to position, you can fix any issues like that. Let's get this last word on there. And I just wanted to lay it out like that. Clean up my glue. And let's take a peek at this beauty. She was herself again. Again, I titled this Under Construction. It is the story of this beautiful young woman who was scorned by this man down here. She's covering up that story, that history, with wallpaper, with paint, with moving on, and by covering him up as well. I think that's a really pretty piece. It's a lot of fun. Other things you could do to this, if you want to add some other little touches, you could certainly put some acetate in front of. You can cut one to the size of inside that frame and stick it in there. If you have any, you could spray some more grunge or anything like that on there. You could add some more splashes, but I'm happy with the way it is. You could also, if you have any like pearl or shimmer mist that would make it like shine a little bit, you could certainly give it a little bit of a misting with that. But I really think it's perfect just like this. It's so pretty. And I think it tells a really fun, sad, but empowering story. So I really hope that you enjoyed walking through the creative process with me today, making my first mixed media project using a Trey Jolie mixed media kit for the month of June. I will warn you that these are sold out. They sell out pretty quickly. You can subscribe to the kits to make sure that you get them, and be able to play around with them. So I hope that this gives you some inspiration and that you had fun with me today. Until next time, be well.